So we are talking about The Man in the High Castle, which is a limited show based on a Philip K. Dick book, I believe. And this one was released by Amazon. It was released very much like the Netflix model. They've kind of made this 10-episode series, released it all at once so you can kind of binge watch it. It was actually released the same time as the Jessica Jones series, so I feel it did get somewhat overshadowed by that, which was a little bit more razzle-matazzle, because obviously it's connected to the Marvel universe. But nevertheless, this one is a quality show that is probably worth a little bit of your time. So if you're not aware of it, like I said, this is actually based on a Philip K. Dick story. I haven't read that, so I can't tell you how accurate it is compared to that. I've heard it is meant to be fairly accurate, although there was an extra character in here that's been developed. And the creator of this show is Frank Spotniz, who has been kind of associated to kind of genre TV for a good many years now, and it basically tells the story of an alternate timeline here. Now, it's set in the early 60s, although it does seem like more of the 50s, I have to be honest with you, where basically the Nazi Germany and Japan have won World War II, and they are now occupying America. And on one half, you've got basically Nazi Germany have kind of taken one half of it, and then you have the Japanese Empire have taken the other half, apart from this kind of one slither in the middle, which is the neutral zone, which I'll come on to in a minute. That's one of my main problems with this. And it really tells the story of, you know, what happens in this kind of alternate timeline, and it really focuses on three kind of factions. You've obviously got the Nazis, you've got the Japanese Empire, and you have the kind of the resistance, which basically is the kind of the free people, the Americans basically trying to kind of fight back from the shadows. And within those factions themselves, you've got, you know, a bit of dissent. You have kind of frictions both in the kind of the Nazi camp and obviously the Japanese, where sort of you know, tensions are rising. And one of the things I found interesting here is right off the bat is that Hitler is actually portrayed as somewhat as a peaceful character, which I found interesting. He's actually now, you know, conquered America basically, and is now kind of calling for peace. He kind of wants peace between Japan and Germany, but there are others in basically the Nazi camp that basically want to kind of like wipe out the Japanese and obviously have America all for itself, and obviously the Japan are kind of acutely aware of this. So this is what I mean, there's just obviously this kind of friction between these kind of two opposing sides. After that, you have the resistance, and it focuses on three characters. You have this kind of couple that are seemingly unwittingly pulled into the resistance and end up becoming sort of key figures, despite the fact they don't really want to do it, to be honest, but they're kind of pulled in it regardless. And you have another man who's the character I believe was made specifically for this show, and he's basically a resistance fighter with a kind of a little bit of a secret. I might kind of go into it. And he is a kind of like the wild card, so to speak. And that's pretty much all I'll tell you about the kind of the plot, because obviously I can't go into it too much because I'm just going to spoil stuff for you. But that's pretty much the plot. So what did I like and what did I did not like? Let's go for the positives first of all. The production design on this show is amazing. It looks fantastic. I mean, they do a great job of really selling you the fact that this is Nazi occupied, or, you know, Japanese occupied America. The attention to detail here is fantastic. I mean, even down to stuff like you have the kind of the Nazi version of Dragnet, for example. You got the posters and stuff like that. Just very little touches here. I'd say they really have made a good effort here, selling you the fact that that this is kind of basically now part of the Reich. And you know, the other thing is interesting as well is the kind of the younger generation that have kind of been brought up just to kind of accept it, and this is the way things are, and they kind of obviously you have this now. This has been occupied for a while now, so people are coming more accepting of it. So you have now people who are not necessarily Germans but are part of the kind of the regime, for example, which I found was quite fascinating. And then obviously the Japanese side as well were a little bit more kind of sort of standoffish from kind of like Caucasians, for example. But they all again have their kind of like their concerns and and their own kind of internal politics. I have to say, one of my favourite characters, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but he's been in loads of stuff, Cary-Hiroyuki or something. He basically was Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat. He's kind of the trade minister from the Japanese, and I thought he was one of the best characters in the show, I have to say. The main star, I guess, is Alexa Davalos, and she plays the kind of the female lead, who is the kind of one of these people who get kind of pulled into the resistance. You may have seen her in a few bits and pieces. I think she was in Angel as kind of the girl with the electric powers and stuff like that. She's been in a few bits of genre TV, and she did an okay job here. I think the acting across the board was pretty much spot on. There was no kind of poor actors, with the exception of a few minor characters here that really just oversell it a little bit. You have one of these kind of like this kind of Nazi commanders, and he's kind of got this young son who's kind of like a teenager. I felt was not the best actor, but relatively minor character. The main issue I have is a little bit to do with the kind of the source material, I think. And I haven't read this, so I can't tell you exactly how much this is adapted and how much is the actual script, the actual screenplay. But the pacing is a little slow sometimes in this show. So that's my main criticism with the actual the way the show developed outside of the kind of the source material. There are a little bit of pacing issues here and there. It's a slow burn, this show. However, there are some concepts that I don't feel work. For example, this neutral zone, I just don't understand why it would be allowed to exist when it's clearly just going to be a place for lawfulness and people to escape to, who kind of want to get out the clutches of the Nazis or the Japanese. I just don't understand why the Nazis or the Japanese would allow this place to exist. To me, it would just, and it's never really addressed. It's just there. You just kind of have to accept it. And it's quite a long stretch of land, basically between the kind of the occupied zones of Nazi Germany, and then the Japanese. To me, it was a bit weird. This comes up with another problem. Is that, and this is my main issue with this show, is my God, does it kind of rely on conveniences. There are so many convenient things that happen, and just happen at the right place, like, haha, there's this drawing I've done of this girl, and kind of I'll drop it, and then it just so happens this one bloke in this entire section of the country will pick it up, who's the kind of this bad guy, and stuff like that. There's time and time again this kind of, it just relies so much on conveniences. Like I go back to the neutral zone, but it's a lawless land apparently, although it seems rather civilized for that, I have to say. Apart from, it's got this one bounty hunter apparently who calls himself the Marshal, who is the kind of the self-appointed kind of like authority there, basically. One guy, and then all of this kind of like hundreds of miles basically of land, and they just happen to run into him, and he just happens to pick up this picture that's fallen on the floor, stuff like that. I mean, it's just kind of, oh God, it's so convenient that these things keep happening. And that to me was my biggest issue with this, was the way this is kind of written sometimes just deals with these conveniences. If you can look past that, you'll love this show. Like I said, the production is fantastic. I love the kind of the action they roles. I think they sell it well. I think the costume design, everything like that is fantastic. It looks great, and it's a very interesting concept. Okay, I'll be a bit from a little slow here and there. Without going into kind of spoilers, I feel people may be a little unsatisfied with the way it ended. And I'm guessing there's going to be a second season at some point, but if there isn't, then a little bit unsatisfying about the explanation of it all. And the conceit here basically is that there's these films that show essentially the Allies winning the war, and this is basically the kind of the main driving force for this kind of story. Is these kind of films that basically show the Allies winning the war and the struggle to get them. But I don't feel that was developed enough. Why are they important, really? I mean, if they got out, you would just deny it and say they're fake. I don't know. We're not given enough about them. I didn't feel. I can't go into too much about it because obviously it will spoil it for you. But to me, that wasn't just kind of. I mean, it's obviously meant to be the central mystery about what's going on, but I don't know. To me, it was just a little bit. I don't feel it was kind of. There was quite enough there to kind of for you to kind of really grasp what was going on in this series. But anyway, don't get me wrong. This is a good series. It's very well made. It's engaging, interesting characters, decent characterization, and that's kind of what you want. I have a few niggles here and there, but overall I give this series an 8 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me comments, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.